Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Family Treehouse, a podcast series brought to you by Storied, where I chat with people that have a passion for genealogy, storytelling, or both. I am your host, Heather Haunert, and boy, are you in for a treat today. I get to chat with Dr. Flora Brown. She is, in my opinion, the ultimate storytelling resource. Flora is a certified guided autobiography facilitator. She has courses, she has books and resources galore on her website. She is just the epitome of an expert when it comes to writing life stories. So, welcome, Flora.
Thank you, Heather, very much.
Super excited to chat with you today. And I think our listeners and viewers are in for a real treat today. So, Laura, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, how you got started in the field of family history and or storytelling, anything you
Okay,
want to tell us.
the beginning would have to go back to my childhood because I'm from an era when children were to be seen and not heard.
Mhm.
And my mother owned a home-based beauty shop,
Huh.
which means that the first room of our house, instead of being a living room, was the beauty shop, right?
Yeah.
And I had two sisters. We were just a year and a half apart, who, loved to go outside and play.
Yeah.
But I love to listen to the women's stories
Yeah.
in the beauty shop because, as you know, most hairstylists are therapists.
Yes.
The women come and they share their stories of woe, and usually many of them are of woe.
Yeah.
And I used to love to listen to those stories, and until I get caught, you know.
Yeah.
Then my mother would go, "What are you doing sitting over? Go get outside, go outside." So I got fascinated with listening to the women's stories. And then the other thing that influenced my childhood was my father used to take me and my two sisters to the movie theater every Saturday of my childhood
Oh, what a
to
great
get us
memory.
out of my mother's way because on Saturdays, that's the busiest day of the beauty shop. And
Sure.
she could not be managing her customers and worrying where we were. So he would grab us up and take us to the movies, and we would be there all day till the almost
Oh,
to the end. So here I'm listening to the stories of the women in the beauty shop, and I'm watching all of the movies that came out in the 50s when
yeah.
I was going in the movies. So I had this, visions of life in the theater, the Hollywood versions, and then I had the real life people.
Yeah.
And so I began to formulate from listening to them, not just I was fascinated with the stories, but I also was using their stories as my guide as to how I wanted to live my life.
Sure.
Because adults used to always tell us when we were getting, wanting to have our freedom and do what we want, they said, when you're 18, you'll be grown and you can do what you want. So that comforted me as a kid because
Yeah.
other kids would just fight with their parents about things they wanted to do. And I would keep thinking, when I'm 18, I can do what I want.
Yeah. Yeah.
I began to listen to these stories and think about, I don't want my life to be like that. I think I'm
Right.
going to do it this way and that way. So actually, and matter of fact, I have a 4-minute video that I made with a digital storyteller that talks about the impact of stories from that beginning.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I got into it. And then, of course, I had relatives and, my mother's friends that would always be sharing stories, but they weren't talking to us. They
Yeah.
were, having their conversations. But if you ask the question, they wouldn't always want to give you the answer because they were very protective of their secrets.
Sure.
Yes,
Sure.
so a lot of things we didn't find out. And then the other thing is, as I began to be more interested in genealogy later, being a child of formerly enslaved people, there's
Mhm.
only so many generations you can go back to even
Right.
genealogical information.
Yeah.
So the stories that I was getting from all over, I just became more and more fascinated. And I fell in love with school from day one, even before I went. That's a whole story too. And so stories have always been a part of my life. And it drives my kids nuts because you have to tell your story. But
I
that's
think
true.
I think all of us parents have that same problem.
Yes, we will not be revered in our own lifetime with our children.
Yeah. Uh, I want to just kind of touch just briefly on the comment you made about how, they kind of, I think it was such a generational thing that they held on to certain secrets that, they didn't want those stories to come out. And I think that's hard because even though they're hard stories and they don't necessarily want them to come out, they're still part of our story,
Yeah, yeah.
that need to be told. So
They didn't understand the value of sharing those hardship stories. Occasionally they would, if it had a heroic outcome,
yeah.
the ones about I walked to school, uphill,
Yeah.
100 miles they walked to school when we would complain. But for the most part, they didn't trust us with that information.
Yeah.
And in some cases, who knows what kind of things, they were hiding things that to our generation are not as important, but to them they
Right.
were very important. And
Yes.
sometimes I visualize how people who were enslaved, a lot of people don't realize that enslaved people weren't allowed to read,
Yeah.
to learn to read or to write,
Right.
and were property. So there you weren't expected to have stories and celebrate your achievements and resilience,
Yeah.
know.
Right.
So that's part of the reason that learning about our relatives is so fascinating. And I got more and more interested in that as I grew up. I still am, as a genealogist, I'm still I keep telling Tania, I'm in the kindergarten with genealogy because
Yeah.
that's a huge, huge, huge field, but it's
Yeah.
extremely important.
Yeah. Agreed. Why why do you think that storytelling is such an important part of that family history component? I think in the past it hasn't always been so in the forefront like it is now. Why do you think that's so important?
Because it's important because the photos, the memorabilia, the certificates, the marriage license, all those things that genealogists find and document are wonderful, but they are flat without the stories that go with them.
Yeah.
You can look at a still photo and you see these happy people. And well, as a matter of fact, in the old days, they didn't smile much on
Yeah.
photos the way we
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
And there's stories behind those pictures. And until we know the stories, we don't really know the whole thing. And we don't have the whole all the context and the pieces. And those stories are important because they guide us, those of us who are reading them, in several different ways. They encourage us, they make
Yeah.
us proud, they give us tenacity when we find out what our loved ones, it doesn't even have to be our loved ones.
Yeah.
It's like anything else. If you hear someone sharing their story of overcoming, let's say, a health issue that
Yeah.
you have, but you haven't told anybody because you think you're the only one in the whole world that has that condition, which is, of course,
Yes.
ridiculous, but that's what we think. And then
Yeah.
you hear someone that you admire sharing all the things they've had to go through to keep living their lives at the same time that they're dealing with these issues. And it's encouraging and it
Yeah.
it gives you a lift and you think, oh wow, if she can still get on stage and perform
Yeah.
even though she has this illness, wow, it's so that story is very important. It helps save other people's lives. It gives them encouragement, and yet the old timers didn't see it that way. And I can understand them because some of the things that they might would have wanted to share were things that if those things got out to
Yeah.
certain people, it could, impact their lives and even end their lives.
Right. Yeah, those stories and those secrets were they were close to the vest for those
Very
people.
close to the vest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Laura, I know there are lots of different ways to go about writing a story, and every person is very different, but talk to us about how you kind of go about what is your process when you're writing a story?
Okay, let me tell you how I got to the process when I was about 4 or 5 years before I retired. my oldest daughter gave me a book. Matter of fact, I have it here, called The Book of Myself. And it's a book that has all of the questions, the kind of the prompts in it. And you just go through and you write those down. So this is what I was supposed to use when I retired to start my autobiography, she called it, which is
Yeah.
really a misnomer. It's really a memoir or a life story.
Yeah.
So I started it very dutifully the first year, when I retired, and only got about 4 or 5 pages into it before I didn't like approaching it that way.
Mhm.
And then many people will tell you, or most people think, that you just do a chronological story. So I
Mhm.
ran across someone else who said just number pages, with the years of your life and go through and chronologically. Yeah, that
Yeah.
didn't work for me either. So what did work for me was, well, two influences. One, I ran across a book written by what do you call, a poet laureate from
Uh-huh.
Mississippi, and her book is 52 micro memoirs, and each of her stories is a, let's see, here. Each of her stories, I love having my books right by me.
Easy access.
Her book is called
Yep, you
Heating
got
and
it.
Cooling, and
I love that. Okay.
her name is Beth Ann Finley.
Okay.
I don't ask me how I ran across this book. Probably it must have been like maybe in a used store or something, because I see she had autographed it. So
Uh-huh.
I started flipping through this, and she wrote this in 2017. But I fell in love with the format, because she tells separate little stories.
Yeah.
They're not in any particular order, which of course you could put it in order if you want. Some
Yes.
are just a paragraph, some are 2 pages, some are four. I loved that because when I started decluttering, this is what got me to my technique. When I started decluttering my house, and when you have kids that are middle-aged kids and you have a lot of stuff. So I started decluttering, and every time I ran across something, it would trigger a memory about
Sure.
it. Even little things like handkerchiefs. I
Yeah.
thought, "My gosh." In fourth grade, our teacher gave us a special award if you brought a handkerchief to class for some reason. I think she thought young ladies should, I think the guys could bring one too. Young ladies and gentlemen are supposed to always have her handkerchief. This was a long time ago. And but anyway, when I ran across these handkerchiefs, these weren't my handkerchiefs from childhood. These were handkerchiefs that some girlfriend had found every time she went to some swap meet or something. She would buy one, and she would buy some, and she would give me one. So I had 3 handkerchiefs, and those reminded me of that fourth grade teacher, and
Yeah.
how important it was to her. And
Yeah.
every time I'd run across something, I'd go, "Oh my gosh, that reminds me of this," and and then I started getting triggered by even just reading somebody's book. I was giving away books,
Yeah.
and I flipped through, a book you never read. I thought, "Oh my gosh, I never read this book," and so I'm flipping through it to at least feel good about giving it away, right? And one of them I had a sentence that said something was wrong. And as soon as I read that sentence, I immediately thought of a situation in my not in my childhood, but when I was invited to be the guest speaker at my childhood church, many
Uh-huh.
after I'd gotten my degree. As soon as I saw that sentence, it reminded me of the whole situation when I
Yeah.
knew something was wrong by the pastor's wife's expression on her face when I finished my speech.
Mhm.
And it was Mother's Day, so I was Mother's Day speaker. But when they asked if she had any words, if she had anything she wanted to say, because the
Mhm.
pastor's wife is a queen, in the church, so to speak. And her expression on her face, she had her lips tight, and she went like, I was like, "What's wrong?"
Yeah.
This was decades ago, but those 3 words reminded me of that situation.
Yeah.
But what you have to do fast before you ask me how do you write these stories, you have to hurry and write this down
Yes.
some. And that's the beauty of
Yep.
story, because if you have a story to count, you can go over there. And of course, it doesn't have to be stored. You can put it on paper. You
Yeah.
can put it on so many different ways.
Yeah.
But somewhere you've got to get it. And it doesn't have to be the whole story, but at least as much as came to mind. And
Yeah.
so for it's storied, I'd go in and put something in and just let it be a draft until I have to
Yes.
go back.
Yeah.
And so that started my technique of what I call one memory at a time.
Hmm.
And so I have built, my goal was to build up to 52 stories, sim similar to what Beth Ann did in her book. It doesn't have to be any number,
Yeah.
whatever you want. But that has been such, it's like it started a gusher
Yeah.
of things for me. And the least little thing I see, and here's the good thing about decluttering, you can take a photo of whatever, like I took a photo of those 3 handkerchiefs, and then I
Yeah.
can get them away. But I can also
Yes.
write a story
Yeah.
that was triggered. So this is the way now that I create stories of my life. And I have 3 grandchildren, excuse me, and about 9 on last count great grands.
Yeah.
Because of that, now I have my interactions with them that pop up,
Sure.
and those become stories, and not to
Yeah.
mention, of course, with my kids. But every time you think of something, you have to write it
Yeah.
down. It's not going to be the finished story.
Sure. Yep.
It's the idea, and it's amazing. You don't have to say a lot.
Yeah.
And one of the things that Tania does, that I got the idea from her, she said she'll just write something like a story about the time that, or something like
Hmm.
that, and just, a couple of words.
Yeah.
Because once you've captured that, you'll be able to recall the rest. Because the memory is there. It's just that
Right.
we have to learn how to retrieve it.
Yeah.
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 So
Yeah. When I hit midlife, I started keeping a journal beside my bed for that very reason, because I would wake up in the middle of the night, just random, and like it would pop into my brain. And I'm like, if I don't write this down, I will forget it by morning. So, yeah.
you will forget it even within a few minutes.
Yes.
I mean, there are times when I don't have like of course I have plenty journals, but I may not have a journal nearby. And matter of fact, I was just going through getting ready to throw away some planners from the old-fashioned planners. This is from
Yeah.
2004. And I was glancing at it and looking at all the little scribbles of places I went, things I did.
Yes.
And in the back somewhere, I had a list of things I did when I went to Santa Fe, New Mexico. And to the special Catholic Church
Uh-huh.
that they believe Jesus Christ visited, and they have this whole story.
Yeah.
This have you heard of it?
Yes. Yes,
Yes.
I have.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I went there because I saw that on television, and I
Uh-huh.
went there to see it for myself. But I didn't write it in a journal or anything back there then,
Yeah.
but I wrote notes about it in here. And I'm like, oh my goodness. So I'm going to have to get that story put up, over
Yes.
on story. So any place you can write it,
Yeah.
whether it's because if it's by your bed, for example, you may not be by your bed when the idea comes.
Right.
You have to grab it. I mean, fortunately, our cell phones are very handy because
Yes.
we can now record them audio, or you
Yeah.
can go in and, create a document and save
Yes.
something
Yeah.
there. And
Yeah.
there are many tools out there in the market where you can, what is it called? Productivity tools
Yes.
like Notion and others, where you can go and put in things and go back and develop them later.
Yeah.
But you've got to capture it when the idea comes. It
Yes.
will it will zoop, go back into the
Yes.
vault, and who knows when it's going to come out again.
For sure. For sure. Well, let's talk for just a minute about, again, there are so many different things out there. What do you have any resources or tools that you recommend for anyone wanting to kind of get started with either researching their family history or writing their family stories?
One of the one of the best resources for me and many others is what my one of my nieces calls the University of YouTube. Because if you go to,
Yep.
when you're trying to, we were talking earlier about technology and editing, so forth. And if you can go there and post a question, And of course, you're going to get the companies themselves promoting their thing,
Sure.
but you're also going to get reviewers and
Yep.
people that will give you their objective opinion sometimes, and then they become affiliates, and then maybe not so. We don't know. But the point is, that's one big source of all kinds of things, and of course, Google and
Yes.
those. But the I would often tell people is find the people who are doing what it is you want to do
Yeah.
and see how you can affiliate with them or join their community.
Great
Because
advice.
now there are many, almost you name it, your libraries
Yeah.
offline, in person, and the in-person libraries. Almost every city has community programs. Every college has programs, not just the academic programs, but they have the community ones. But you find somebody or a group that's doing what you want to learn to do.
Yeah.
And there's no substitute for community.
Yeah.
We could all get a book. There are, thousands of books on how to write a memoir, how to
Yeah.
write your story. There's many journals out there, as we talked about, with prompts. All of those are good. But I really think that working in community with somebody, whether, it's a free or paid, you're going to learn things, but more importantly, you're going to get encouraged and stay encouraged,
A
because
hundred
we
percent.
get discouraged so fast
Yes.
because we compare ourselves to, somebody who's a zillion dollars away from where we are.
Yeah.
And the thing about life stories is everybody does not want to publish their life
Right.
stories for the general public.
Right.
And really, that's my favorite target audience because they want to write their stories. They don't know where to start.
Yeah.
They're insecure about a whole lot of things, about telling their family secrets.
Yeah.
What are people going to think and how much should they tell? They have a lot of fears,
Yeah.
but they also don't want to publish it on Amazon
Right. Right.
for the world to buy. So that's my favorite group. But you find somebody that's doing what you want to do. And on Facebook, there are thousands of writing groups,
Yeah.
and they're easy enough to join and leave, join and leave if
Yep.
it's not,
Yep.
meeting your need. But the other thing, once you get into a group here and there, you're going to begin to build your own community.
Yeah.
Like now, I know so many editors and publishers and people who are in genealogy and in life story or memoir writing. And so this is where you start, right wherever you are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And don't you think too that the groups, it just, they do encourage and it's motivation and it's just holding it. I just had a chat with one of my team members today at Storied. It just sometimes I just want somebody to hold me accountable. I can try to hold myself accountable, but when I've got somebody else telling me,
We're not good at that, most of us. Um, Sometimes I question myself. Sometimes I say, "How in the world did I make it through the doctoral program?" I was very focused and stuck with it. But the reason I did was because I got rid of everything. It took me 4 years, and I was on a grant, so somebody else is paying for me to go to school. I was
yeah,
highly motivated to, complete.
get it done.
But I can remember that and I had my children, I had the first two children, and I was so focused that that was my life. I would
Yeah.
drop them at preschool or whatever, and then I'd go to university.
Yeah.
So I really focused. And even phone calls and conversations, if I had to call somebody, I would say, "Hi, I'm calling you for three things, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Talk to you later, bye." So I was very focused, but this is very different these days because back there then, I'm trying to remember that even have social media because social media really started at the end of the 90s.
Yes. Yeah.
So yeah, this was even before that. Now we have so many distractions
Mhm.
and so many demands on our lives. It's very different.
Yeah.
So having somebody, as a matter of fact, some programs have, and I've done them too. I've had challenges where they
Mhm.
have a 5-day challenge and they
Yes.
have something for you to do each day. And those make a difference. We
Yes.
need accountability.
Yeah.
If I was thinking about this before we met today, about how every successful athlete, writer, you name it, therapists, they all have coaches, they all have
Yes.
therapists, they all have groups that they're part of.
Yeah.
I even saw somewhere that Stephen King is in a little band, three or
Yeah.
four of them or five, whatever, and they each play, but they're all writers.
Yes.
I believe they're all writers, and but they play together because they enjoy music. But he has that camaraderie
Hmm.
with people that are doing something similar to what he's doing
Yeah.
and are creative. So
Yeah.
we need that
Yeah.
because we're humans. We're just going to get discouraged,
Yeah.
and we need somebody to to push us along when we
Yeah.
say, "Oh, I don't think I can
Yep.
finish this."
Keep us on track.
Keep us on track. And like you say, if you have somebody that you have to each day or each week, whatever, they say, how's that book going? Or
Yeah.
how's your story? Or if you're in a class and you have to submit something,
Yes.
it makes a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
Definitely
does.
does. Well, this is always my favorite point of my conversations with people. I would love for you to tell us what is your favorite family story that you like. And it may be different today than it was, last week, but what right now is your favorite family story?
Oh my goodness. I have so many favorites. Um, I'll tell you about one that I want to write about, and I started writing about it and finished it. And I call it the Macaroni Cheese Party.
Okay.
Um, as you know, recipes and food are a great topic for writing your life stories because almost every
Absolutely.
family has a lot of stories that surround food and eating and so forth. But the macaroni and cheese story is um, when my youngest daughter was at UCLA, she went there, I think, as a junior. And while she was taking classes, she was also living on campus and working. And she worked in an office with counselors, I think, who went out into the community and had a program where they encourage kids to go to, college. So they'd have
Mhm.
tours and this and that. So in that office where she worked, there were a number of coworkers, as in all offices around the holidays, people start talking about what they're going to do for Christmas or Thanksgiving or whatever. So my daughter was always bragging in that with her coworkers about my macaroni and cheese.
Uh-huh.
And one day she calls me, and I think it was at the beauty shop, and she goes, "Mom, what are you doing?" I said, "What are you doing? I'm at the beauty shop." The kids always say, "What are you doing?" As if I'm sitting around twiddling my thumbs. I'm not doing anything. And so I said, and when your kid calls you from college, they want something. Well,
Absolutely.
so I go, what is it? It's almost time for me to get my hair done. What do you want? And she was like, you know, I was telling my friends about your macaroni and cheese and how great it is. And they said, why don't you invite us to your house so we can taste your mother's macaroni and cheese? Now, UCLA is a zillion miles away. Well, not that, but it is far away from us. And I thought, what? I said, Adrian, you want me to have people over just to taste my macaroni and cheese? First of all, my macaroni and cheese is the simplest recipe ever. Okay. I don't use the box thing. I cook it the way my mom did, but it's very limited ingredients, the macaroni and the cheese and the eggs and some milk.
Yeah.
What's but it's good. Anyway, so I said, I know that doesn't sound like I said, I have an idea. Why don't you come home, make some macaroni and cheese, and take the dish to school? Because
Yeah.
most offices bring food and they have, celebrate. And she goes, "No, that won't be the same." I said, "I know it won't be the same because you can't you can't serve somebody macaroni and cheese and that's it.
Yeah.
You say, welcome, here's your plate and your fork and macaroni and cheese. Because I knew where this was headed. This was headed to a meal.
Yes.
But she's very persuasive. That youngest daughter of mine, she's very persuasive. So she kept at it. And she knew I love to decorate for Christmas. So she
Yeah.
said, well, after all that decorating and everything you do, it would be really nice, to have. So that year, I said, okay, fine. So I can't remember. I think there were about 9 kids, not kids,
Yeah.
young adults. They
Yes.
came over all the way from the area wherever they lived, and we had macaroni and cheese and whatever else I cooked.
Yeah.
And so that was the end of that, I thought. Then the next year, she calls me and she goes, Mom, everybody's asking when we're going to have our macaroni and cheese party. I'm like, oh, what? I said, girl, that was a one-time thing. What are you talking about? I said, what you need to do is learn how to make macaroni and cheese yourself so you
Right.
can. And she says, oh, Mom, come on. She said, there were people who missed the party last year. And well, we weren't calling it a party then, who missed it because they couldn't come, whatever. So couldn't we do that again? And I'm like, no. So I dismissed that call, but she didn't give up. So she kept pressing because I do love to entertain. I
Yeah.
do love to decorate, but we're gonna have a party that started all because of macaroni and cheese.
Yeah.
Well, the long the long haul of that story is when you see this picture on Story, you're going to say, what? That party became an annual Christmas party that we have been having every year except during the pandemic
Oh my gosh.
that we call the friends, what do we call it? Friends and family holiday. But I got smart, Heather, along the line. I said, whoa, we don't need to have me cook all of this food anymore. It's going to become a potluck.
Absolutely.
So it became a potluck, but we have been doing that party since my daughter was in college, and I can't remember how many years, but we've been doing it every year, and it's become our annual holiday party. But after about the second time we did it, I thought, well, we need to have some games or something. So we started having games, and it's become a lot of fun. And we, like I said, during the pandemic, we didn't have it, but it grew to about 30, 40 people that came to
Oh,
the party. Of course, they were my friends and family, not just her colleagues.
yeah, right.
But the macaroni and cheese party story is unbelievable that it would grow into
Yeah.
an annual party. And unfortunately, the pandemic put. A matter of fact, I do have a story that I put together, slides of photos showing the last one we had just before the pandemic.
Yeah.
Nobody had on masks or anything. And but it's been great because I have friends and family, who came to some of the early parties who have passed on now.
Yes.
And so we try to do it the second Saturday of December before everybody gets super busy with all the
Yeah.
Christmas things they're doing. And everybody looks forward to it. And it's become sort of, we have we started like at 6 o'clock, and we know that the older people, my group, we're going to be on time. The young people aren't going to get there until 8 o'clock, no matter what you say. And then they're going to kind of drift off to the patio and
Yes.
get out there and drink and beer and.
Yeah.
So it becomes kind of two parties, but that's okay. Yeah,
Yeah, that is a great story, great
yeah,
memory. And I love that it's just continued on. That was the icing on the cake.
yeah. And but the best part about it for me is that that I'm not doing all the cooking. I
Yeah.
had to train those people what potluck means. They try to act like they didn't know what potluck meant.
Yeah.
And they'd go, well, what do you mean potluck? Potluck means you bring something.
Yeah.
And my grandchildren are adults. They were kind of the hardest to understand potluck
Yes.
because they would drive 30 miles to get to my house and come in empty-handed. And I'd go, what did you bring? Oh, did you want me to bring something? Potluck means you bring something, and you bring something already. I had to train them about this, already cooked.
Right.
My
Done.
my granddaughter brought this raw yams that she wanted to boil and cook to make candy yam. No, I don't want my kids. No. So I had to train them about what is potluck and how do you do potluck. So my latest thing, even if I do it, other than that party, if I have like an Easter brunch,
Yeah.
finally learned to just tell people if I'm going to cook, I tell them this is family mainly. Tell them what I'm going to cook.
Yeah.
and then say, bring whatever your children like to eat. Because they say,
Yes.
what do you want me to bring? I
Yeah.
don't care.
Yes.
Bring what your children like to eat.
Yeah.
And I have to tell them what time I'm going to start. So, because otherwise they try to see all of their relatives in other cities on their way to my city, and then they get here late.
Yes. Yeah.
And with our family, I used to, for Thanksgiving, take our family picture that went on our Christmas card.
Oh, yeah.
So that was my plan.
Yeah.
Well, uh, that plan is impossible to do unless you get everybody at the same time.
Right.
And I
Right.
wanted it before dinner because after dinner, you're tired, you're greasy mouth, and you don't want to take
Yeah.
it. So finally, I gave up on the photo thing and now I ask people to send individual photos, whatever you want. And I, hodgepodge them,
Collage them up. Yeah.
collage them up because, and you know what? Each year it gets harder and harder. And I'm at the point where, you know what? I might just put my picture on there and forget your picture.
Right. You guys do your own.
Yeah, it's really gets hard, but I love when I did do that, started doing the brunches for Easter, that I said, "Eh, I will start at noon and I will cook this, this, and this. I think three things.
Yeah.
And you bring whatever.
Yeah.
And that way, if they bring something, fine. If they don't, if they get there for, I don't care because the ones who want to, and it's great because the ones who want to sit and chat and have conversation,
Yeah.
we can have a good time for a couple of hours before
Right.
ones come who have all the little kids. Because
Right.
it
Right.
changes the whole dynamic of the event. But
Sure does.
yeah, though where there's a lot of stories around, I think parties, and food. But
Yes. For
Macaroni
sure.
Cheese Party is the one that
Yeah.
started
That's a good one.
innocently enough and became a tradition where people are calling to see, what's the date of that party.
Oh, love that. Well, Flora, you've made my day. Your passion for storytelling is just evident, and I just appreciate so much that I'm honored that you spent time with me today. So thank you for that.
You're most welcome.
Until next time, friends, embrace the power of the family's untold tales and embark on a journey of discovery. Let the ink flow and the words dance as you weave together the threads of your ancestors' lives. Start writing your family stories today and let their voices echo through the generations to come at story.com. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye.
And that brings us to the end of this episode of the Family Treehouse, where we celebrate the power of storytelling and preserving our family legacies. Storied is more than just a platform for sharing stories. Dive into those historical records and newspapers, discovering the hidden gems that bring your ancestors to life. Add branches to your family tree, connecting the dots between generations. Thank you for joining us on this storytelling journey. Your stories matter, and through story, they have the power to resonate across time and touch the hearts of generations to come. Keep uncovering your family's history and keep the spirit of storytelling alive with Storied.